Boom.
I love the opening.
It's just a little long. I should edit it a little.
No, it kept me on my toes the whole time. I loved it. Great job, Kenny.
Pretty cool, right? Yeah.
Yeah, really good job. Absolutely.
Is it better than the Coliseum video opening? I don't know.
Ooh, it's similar. I see the Coliseum whole video. I probably watched hundreds of times. So that
Me
gets.
too. I tell everyone that is my favorite intro to
When
anything.
Superfly comes off the top, right?
Oh yeah, and he's
Yeah.
crashing. Who's that he comes down on that he bounces off of? Oh, yeah, brutal.
It's good
Yeah.
stuff.
And then Andre, isn't two people slamming Andre at the same, right?
Yeah, Wait, there's the. I think Andre gets slammed. No, Andre slams Kamala at the end.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Well, there is a double body slam.
Splashes him. I thought he splashes him, but maybe I could be wrong.
It's in the cage match. It's one of the two. You're right.
Yeah.
Two of them in Toronto in the cage match.
Something.
Yeah.
Kamala takes a beating, so I don't want to talk about that. Got to continue to sell the books for the family.
There you go. Rest in peace.
Yeah. So, all right, let's do the introduction. So now, ladies and gentlemen, the writer of Cowboy Scott Armstrong's book, Nicholas Masci.
Scott Casey.
What did I say? Armstrong?
Armstrong, yeah.
My bad.
One Last Ride, the tale of Cowboy Scott Casey.
Check it out. I said Armstrong. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Scott,
No, it's okay. It's okay. Scott probably put over many of the Armstrong family.
He probably did.
But what's up, guys? Thanks for having me.
He had an interesting career, right?
Scott.
Yeah, I was reading about him. He went from heavyweight champion, right, to what was he, Southwest Wrestling or something like that?
Yeah, he won the Southwest heavyweight title back when they were a national company on the USA Network. He went over Adrian Adonis, who we brought up off camera earlier. Yeah.
Right, so Nick wrote the book. Did he train with Joe Blanchard, or was he around before Joe Blanchard?
So he when he broke in, Joe was still an active wrestler, but he wasn't trained by Joe Blanchard.
Oh, okay.
He was actually trained by a pretty damn impressive group of people. It was Dory Funk Sr., Dory Funk Jr., Terry Funk, Dick Murdoch, and Bobby Duncombe Sr. Huh. Those are the guys that broke him in and, taught him how to bump and, kind of sent him on his career.
Okay, so Joe Blanchard also, I wrote Tito's book, and he broke Tito in for the most part.
Yeah, sure.
So I was seeing if there's a bit of a connection there. They probably know each other well, I would guess.
Tito and Scott, yeah.
They must,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but then he went to WWF, and he just pretty much became Enhancement. Now, I wonder how does that happen? I wonder. Why would he agree to that?
Well, so what happened is if you guys remember, I'm sure at that point, Vince was pretty much just collecting assets from every other territory in the country. So he was, apple picking the top 3, 4, and 5 guys from, every territory, but he already had his Hogans, his Machos, his Pipers, his Andres. So he was acquiring talent in a lot of cases more so to hurt other people than to help himself. Right. And Scott, who while he was still drawing money in the Texas area and he was being featured still in the Von Erich territory, when Vince brought him in, it was more or less to hurt the Texas-based promotions than to help himself, especially because Vince never gave him the chance to become Cowboy Scott, which is what he had his biggest run as. So.
Yeah, I remember him from the Von Erichs. I mean, my earliest memories of watching wrestling on TV Saturday mornings was getting up, and I remember seeing some WWF back in the day. I lived in the Boston area, but I would see the Von Erichs, and I remember Scott Casey vividly from them, and he was with Kabuki and Sunshine, right? Sunshine.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they were going against Jim Cornette or something, right?
That sounds right. They had a feud with Scott Casey had a feud with the Midnight Express. It was
Midnight Express.
Cornette's green jacket.
That's it. Yeah. And I remember Kabuki really scaring me as a kid. Kabuki was like the precursor to Muta, which a lot of the younger or not as old as me kind of people might remember. Kabuki would do the spit and the whole deal, had the green painted face, and Muta came just a little bit after that and was in better shape, and he kind of, I don't want to say he stole his spotlight, but he's the one that people seem to remember for the spit and everything like that.
Sure.
Yeah. But yeah, so Texas Von Erichs, did you watch that kind of stuff too, Nick? Is that what got you into writing his book? I guess is my question.
So that's a good story. So it actually, to make a long story short, I did grow up watching when my family got cable at the very end of the 80s. So I'm 35. So my family got cable at the very end of the 80s. I had watched, obviously, Jim Crockett Promotion. They had syndicated television. WWF was on, all the local channels. But I hadn't seen anything besides that. So when we got ESPN, I started seeing the Texas Wrestling World Class and the AWA. So World Class always held a soft spot in my heart. I remember Scott from being a kid. About 6 or 7 years ago, I started bringing in wrestlers to the different convention signings. And, I brought in at this point, a lot of different wrestlers. And I don't like to bring in the same talents that you see at shows all the time, Kenny. I'm not going to mention anyone's name, but you see sometimes the same names over and over again. So Scott Casey was always on my list as someone to bring in as a unique name to the area. And I first worked with Scott about 4 years ago. And right after we worked together, we hit it off. We had a great dinner the night before, a few drinks, and we did the signing the next day. About 3 weeks later, he wound up having a heart attack that led to quadruple bypass surgery. And I think when something like that happens, you see that light at the end of the tunnel, maybe diminishing a little, or the end is closer. So I talked with Scott, and it just organically came up. I had been never had anything published, but I was written before, some stuff on websites and things like that. I always enjoyed it in high school and college. And it came up that Scott kind of wants someone to tell a story because Scott doesn't have any children. He's not married. And, unfortunately, as we all know, sometimes when that person passes on, a lot of their history dies.
Right.
And in this case, the history of a public business, and in my opinion, a business that it needs to be documented, for the business. So I talked to Scott about it. Scott was very open and actually very enthusiastic about, starting the project. So we started it, and I talked to you, Kenny. I talked to, John Cosper. And you guys gave me some great advice on the process of, squeezing the juice out of the orange and, and then eventually publishing the book. And then we did probably close to a dozen public appearances over the last couple of years. And obviously this year, 2020 has been an odd year, one for the record books, but that's a little about the process of writing the book with Scott.
So, and I think not to step over, Ed, if you have a question, I have something I wanted to talk to you about. Yeah. Okay. So a lot of people may not know really what your role is or a person like yours. Some people have heard the name Eric Sims because he's done like Howard Stern's show.
Yeah.
When I first heard of him, I was like, who is this guy? And this was years ago. And I looked him up on YouTube, and my first impulse was he was some kind of weird Mark dude that was paying wrestlers to let him drive them around. And that was it. And I'm like, I don't understand what's happening here. And he would put the wrestlers in front of the screen, and he would say, tell them that I'm the best agent. And I'm like, what the hell is he talking about now? See, I've been in the business for a while. I started back in like 93, 94. I was a manager. I had never heard of agent until maybe 5-6 years ago. I mean, I'd heard of it, but not into the capacity of what it's become these days. And people probably may realize now, maybe they don't, but people may realize now that after a wrestler can no longer wrestle in the ring, just recently, a whole new career can open up through Comic-Con and appearances and all. Can you speak to what it is that you do with Casey and all these other guys that you're talking about? Because I don't think fans understand. Some don't.
So you brought up the word agent. I personally don't like that term.
Okay.
But it is kind of similar.
You know what I mean? Concept. Yeah.
So of course. So I can tell you a little about what it is. I consider myself a vendor when I work the conventions, or a promoter if I'm promoting events. So I'll contact, let's just say, Scott Casey in this case. I'll say, Scott, I'd love to bring you up to the New York City area. I have A, B, C events. I'd like to offer you, X, Y, Z for that time period. I'll cover your transportation. I'll cover your lodging. Everything we bring in on the front end would go towards my expenses and my hopeful, because you don't always make a profit on these guys.
Right.
There's no real formula, but after you've done it a while, like anything, you get used to, what kind of deals you have to make so everyone's happy. So with that, every deal is different. So there's some people that, of course, they're going to be looking for a guarantee of this much. Some people are going to be looking for a guarantee of this much, and some people are okay with just, maybe doing a 50-50 for everything that's brought in. Yeah. Yeah. So, but yeah, the gist is I'll bring in a Scott Casey for the weekend, and I'll do a signing in New Jersey. I'll do a signing in Queens, and I'll see if, there's a radio station or someone else is interested in, having him on for a half-hour spot, a paid appearance, or, paid radio spot, and kind of, so like, Scott, here's your money. At the end of the day, I'll add up my expenses, see if I'm in the red or the black, and then that's when I know if I made money. So it's kind of it's a risk. It's a gamble. There's no guarantees, but after a few years of this, I'd like to think that I've gotten a lot better with minimizing my risks and coming out in the black more often than not.
What would you pay some like me and Kenny to do an appearance?
50-50 split, guys, right? 50-50. Make and take.
Oh, well, what's interesting about that is that they do that. I collect like baseball memorabilia.
Sure.
And they have private signings all the time where they'll have like, they'll pay Larry Bird $60,000 for 8 hours, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So what they're trying to do is they're going to pre-sell as much as they possibly can, try to recoup like 75% of that money.
Yeah.
And then they're going to have him spend like the extra 2 hours signing as much as he possibly can, and then they can go out and sell that stuff and hope that they can make a little bit of a profit.
Yeah. Yeah, it's similar in concept with someone like Larry Bird. I know he probably doesn't do many public appearances. Is for the private signings, like you said.
Yeah.
And there are some wrestlers too, your higher end wrestlers that, like no one's going to be getting Hogan to do any, public appearances anytime soon, but they might be able to work out a deal with, Ron out of Florida for maybe a private signing for 200 pieces or for maybe an hour or something along those lines. Yeah. Similar concept to that.
It's interesting.
So to speak on this a little bit more, so the Comic-Con's bringing a new revenue stream to the retired wrestlers, I think is really cool.
Absolutely.
One of the reasons why I got into writing was to try to help some of the boys make some money. I started with the Kamala, and it was a Kickstarter, and the Kickstarter reward was a book, and then the book became bigger than we thought, and it opened up an avenue for a website and to create merch for Kamala, and then other wrestlers followed suit. So here's the funny thing about that, though. When I go to some of these signings, and I think I told you this, and I figured I'd bring this up. Why not? Just be honest.
Yeah.
I do a shitty job when it's just me at a table and trying to sell Kamala's book. Kamala's not there. Yeah. People look around. They probably have $50 in their pocket. They go, I could buy $25 with Kamala's book, but I probably can just buy Kamala's book online. So I'm going to go over there to that table there. So at these shows, me as a writer, representing talent, but not the talent themselves, I do horribly. I don't do a good job. And I think the reason being, and correct me if I'm wrong, is because I'm in competition with actual talent and a limited amount of money in people's pockets. So more recently, as of last year or so, I'm sitting at these things and I'm like, I sell a couple books and that's it. And then I go home and I see that I have 8 or 9 orders. Maybe some of them are, based on an appearance and someone thought about buying it, but just picked it up online later. I'm not sure. But it doesn't feel like it's worth my time. A mutual friend of ours at Heroes Hideout, Steve Duckett, he said I should bring just a random guy with me and then sell the other books. Bring Jake, or someone else. And I've just not done that. What do you think I should do?
Oh, absolutely, Kenny. So, one of the things I have in my favor is that when I show up at the conventions, it's like 95% of the time I'm with one of the boys, one of the wrestlers, and that's depending on
your books on the table. Then you throw.
I do have books on the table all the time, and that's a way that I'll always get someone to come over. Now, just if I have Sergeant Slaughter and someone comes over, it does not mean they're gonna even look at the Scott Casey book, but if they're talking about maybe Slaughter from the early 80s, I'd be able to interject with, I don't know if you guys remember Cowboy Scott Casey just finished his biography, or if they're even taking a look, they might ask me about that. But at this point, because I've done so many signings, I have a X amount of merchandise to where I'll always have something on the table.
Other stuff. Okay.
Yeah. But at the same time, I probably wouldn't do it just on my own. You're better off with getting eyes on your books on your table with someone that's been on TV at some point, national TV for.
Right. And I'm saying this for other people who might be listening, because there's a lot of writers that listen to this and might think, damn, I go to this thing and I'm not selling anything. Why? Do I suck? What the problem is here?
No.
the other thing I wanted to point out with that is that sometimes I'll go to these things and it feels like work, it almost, and it almost feels like, being in competition with all of these guys reminds me of the reason why I got into nonfiction and stayed away from fiction, because to try to push your own brand rather than to, I don't want to say ride the coattails, but, put a topic or a category out there. It's very difficult. Now a guy like Mike Kingston does a good job with it. Mike Kingston, Headlock Comics?
No, I don't.
Okay, so the guy that he's at a lot of Steve Duckett's things. He draws a comic book, Jerry King Lawler.
You know what? Yes, I have. I'm
sure you know him.
Stuff. Yeah, no, I do. Yeah. I didn't know him by name, but no, I've seen him at the shows before.
Yeah, so like Jerry Lawler does his covers, and like sometimes he gets like Hurricane or another wrestler to write some of the story with him. So to push a fiction or to push your brand and not riding off the coattails, for lack of a better terms, of a topic or a wrestler or a talent like a ghostwriter would write something about, it's very difficult to just go out and say, I'm going to write a sci-fi book. There are millions of sci-fi books out there. So if I were to put that out there, people would say, okay, The Black Hole by Kenny Casanova. I'm buying this because of Kenny Casanova. I'm not buying it because of The Black Hole. So you have to really establish your name. And if you don't have a following already for your name, then it's a very difficult task. So when I'm sitting at these things, I'm like, geez, they don't like the Kenny Casanova book. You know what I mean? But I know it's not that. It just feels like crap. I feel like Mickey Rooney in The Wrestler, who's sitting there, trying to sell or a couple of gimmicks to like a handful of people that seem uninterested. So it sucks.
Yeah, I've never. I think I told you, Kenny, when we just brought up the conversation that we had, off air previously, that I never sold more than maybe 3 books without Scott there at a given show.
Tough,
you know, and 3 might have been like a good day. When Scott's there, we might move a dozen or maybe 2 dozen, on the high end.
Yeah.
But it's different when you're there. People might ask about it because a lot of the fan base in the New York, New Jersey area, they'll come to the convention, so they're aware of me, and they'll be like, oh, we heard about this book, or what are you up to now? So they might give it a shot based on that. But with that said, if someone comes to my table and they want a Hulk Hogan trading card, they're not going to care about anything I've done as a human being.
That's what I mean. Yeah. So you're selling the brand of the Hulk Hogan. I mean, basically
at that point, Hulk is the reason that we're going to have any kind of financial transaction. So beyond that, there is no connection. But even that's with the wrestling conventions that I go to, because that's something that would happen at one of the bigger Comic-Cons, like a Rhode Island Comic-Con or a New York Comic-Con. A lot of the conventions and independent wrestling shows that I'm at, there's a lot of the hardcore fans. There are your more mainstream, your AEW, your Monday Night Raw fans, but there's a lot of people that are fans of the wrestling from the 70s, 80s, 90s. So, if they see someone on my table, like behind, I've got a Barbarian. If I have a Barbarian 8x10, someone might be interested in that. Whereas, other than if it visually catches their eye at a Comic-Con, no one would even think twice about a Barbarian 8x10,
Right.
So it's I guess it's kind of like whatever environment that you happen to be in at that time. And the environment I'm typically in is the wrestling bubble.
I need to go to one of these shows one day.
Yeah, you're
pretty cool, Eddie.
I've only been to the Comic-Cons, but I haven't been to an actual wrestling convention.
It's on a way smaller scale than like the bigger Comic-Cons.
Yeah.
Though I did do Comic-Con twice, and when I was there,
who did you do it with?
Should I say his name, because he didn't do well, and I want to talk about the fact that he didn't do well. Nick, you would maybe know who I'm talking about. His logo is like a belt.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
Right. So I don't want to say this was an error. But, and me trying to figure out these things, because this is relatively new, and to see how it works and to see where I fit into the whole picture of this, and maybe other writers might say the same thing here. And that's kind of why I'm asking these questions, because I personally, I probably won't do a lot of these anymore unless I've got talent with me or something like that. But so what happened was, this other guy said, instead of booking a Bret Hart or booking a Goldberg or booking, young bucks or a big name. He booked a bunch of mid-card and lower card names. He booked like 6 or 7 of them. And it was cool, but I mean, he didn't have one big name to draw people over to his table. And to me, again, it felt like since there were so many other big names there, people are competing for a buck, and he lost his shirt that day. And it's not because of the talent he brought in, but it's because of what I think he was competing against. And he spent as much as probably the guy that brought Bret Hart in, but he had them spread out over 6 or 7 names rather than to bring in one big name. And man, that guy lost tens of thousands of dollars that day. He said he's since made it up, and that's good. But what would you say to that? Is it better to throw more of your money into one name when you're doing a big show like that? Or this is WrestleCon maybe a couple years ago.
Yeah. So, I mean, what I found is that WrestleCon is it's almost like it's a beast in a way, and that there's too much of a good thing is still too much, because lots of these conventions, you might have 20, 30, maybe 40 of the retired wrestlers, but WrestleCon, they'll have 125, 130, 140.
What the hell?
Yeah. Which is like, if you think about it, there's a limited amount of money that any one customer can spend. Now, you're going to get a lot more customers there than you would at a show that has 30 or 40 people, but there's still a limited amount of money that's going to be leaving wallets. Yeah. So if obviously your Bret Harts, your Goldbergs, your Sting, they're going to be taking 30, 40, 50% of that money. That means the rest of the other 50% of the money is going to be scattered amongst the other 120 guests. So it's like the trickle down effect, Yeah. When I had Sergeant Slaughter over on Comic-Con, after a point, we were actually to some extent able to name our own price, because he's Sarge, and everyone knows who Sarge is, either by name or by appearance. People are always going to come over. Had I had Scott Casey there, I probably wouldn't have been able to cover his flight and his hotel. But if I have Scott Casey with 200 hardcore wrestling fans, I probably do better bringing double or triple the amount of money than at a Comic-Con with 25,000 people. Yeah. So it's kind of like almost knowing what that audience expects or wants. But even then, there's no formula to where it's 100% all the time.
So do you have a little bit, I don't want to say a formula, but do you have a practice? Like, do you take into consideration the bigness of the show, the bigness of the name, and work a balancing act? Really?
Absolutely.
See, this is mind-boggling to me, Eddie. I wouldn't think of any of this stuff. I'm done
it's also knowing if I'm bringing in, let's say I'm bringing in for one shot, right?
Yeah.
And I offer, and you'll do that one shot for $500, right?
Right.
And I'm covering hotel and airfare, or we might be able to pick up a second shot, so you'll do both of them for me, that second one at a discount for $750, or you'll do that second shot on a 50-50, you get your 500 guarantee for the first, right? Knowing how big that first show is will likely decide what I'm offering as on the back end, or what kind of guarantee I can offer for that first show. Because I'll know based on what the crowd is. Because I keep pretty good books, so I have everything down to tolls I spent, meals I spent, obviously flight costs, 8x10 costs, table costs. So and on average, and I don't know because I don't talk to all the promoters that run shows. Not that they would tell me the truth anyway, to be honest. But I just visually, it is. You can count how many people are in a show. So I know it with my eyes, if I'm going to a show in New Jersey and they're drawing 150 people and I made this amount with Butch Reed, I know that if I bring in someone of Butch Reed's caliber for the next time they have a show, they're probably going to draw a similar amount of people. So I can kind of use those numbers to set me up on what I would need to do to make money with that other talent for the entire weekend, which might include a second signing, a radio appearance, a private signing, things like that, to where that takes money.
Right.
They're able to cover hotel rooms and some of the other expenses that way. Some of the other, sponsors.
Yeah. So Eddie, I'm going to ask him some more business stuff, but I want you to ask a mark out question now based on someone he's worked with, so we don't bore people who's sick of this business stuff.
Have you ever had somebody that you gave a guarantee to, and then like you blew it out of the water, and they were like, "Ooh,
like sold a lot." You mean?
Maybe I should have gotten more money. Like, has that ever happened?
Yeah. That the one that comes up to my mind, and you guys are probably gonna laugh, And he's a great guy, but he's a rare guy. And I know you'll know what I'm talking about, Kenny. I'm not sure if you will, Eddie, but Barry Orton, Barry O.
Yeah.
Well, that's probably like finding the rare card in a deck, right? Because I mean, a pack of cards, because people don't see him much, right?
And that's exactly what it was, Kenny. So I worked with Bob Orton a couple of times, and just casually I made conversation with Bob. I'm like, do you still talk to your brother Barry? He's like, yeah, anytime I call my mom, Barry lives with my mom. He takes care of my mom out in Vegas. So I'm like, next time you talk to Mom or Barry, could you talk to him, see if he's interested in an appearance? And he's like, of course. So sure enough, I was like, okay, Bob's going to forget. Bob texted me like a day or two later, like, Barry's interested. Here's the number. Give him a call. So I wound up giving a number. We came up in an agreement, and I was a little worried because it was a Las Vegas flight. It was a hotel. And, and if I lost every single dollar I put out, I wouldn't have been, begging for coins on the street. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I could have lost, money.
Yeah.
So I was a little worried, but the pre-sales started coming in. Long and short, I made nearly triple of what my investment was in on him. And he was cool with it. We've worked together since. I haven't been as fortunate since because, like you said, Kenny, it's almost the great white buffalo. The first time you see it, you're like, whoa. The next time you see it, you're like, whoa. And then after that, you're like, the great white buffalo.
So it's almost like killing the town kind of concept. If you run the same place over and over, eventually people get bored with it if you don't keep throwing in surprises and real good products. So if you keep overexposing the same guy over and over and over again, then there'll be less of a draw. Let me speak to this for a second, and I think I can. Eddie's a big Brutus Beefcake fan. Okay, that's how we met. He was offering some website insight for when I put the book out on Brutus.
Okay.
Eddie notices that I drop in. I happen to put this book out often, and that's part of the reason the show here. But So back, I would say. I want to say early 2000s, and I don't know if even Nick, you would be able to speak to this or not, but in the Boston area and New Jersey area, he had run so many areas in the Northeast that he wasn't a draw for a while. People had killed the town with Brutus, just locally, I would say. Now, if he went over to California, he probably could command more money. But I would guess around here, he was making like pennies on the dollar of what he probably can command today.
Mm-hmm.
But back then, nobody wanted to book him for a long time because he was on every show. He was everywhere. So I would guess if you can translate that over to the new appearance Comic-Con kind of scene, that there are a handful of people that are probably starting to kill the town, I guess, for lack of a better term, when it comes to the appearance of that individual. I don't know if maybe Bret Hart near Calgary might not be a good autograph bringer because everyone there who wants it already has it. Can you speak to that as far as like killing the town with Comic-Cons, or is that not the case?
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, I completely. So I actually live in New England now. I'm right outside Hartford, but I wasn't up here in the early 2000s. But I do know exactly what you're saying because there's other local talent. I'm not going to mention their names because
No, and Brutus is cool now. I just use him as an example of a lot of promoters used him too much.
Sure, and we can use Brutus for an example on this extent. Like you said, Brutus at that point in time in Boston probably wasn't a draw, but had he been at a right show in Los Angeles or Florida or Texas, would be a big draw still in those towns. And I think that between that, because Tito Santana is someone, I will bring him up, a fantastic book, by the way. Shout out to Kenny Casanova. So Tito's someone I've worked with, probably half a dozen times at this point.
He's great.
And great guy. And Tito, he does a lot of things local. However, when Tito goes outside of the markets, it's Tito's not as common there. So he's able to draw bigger, than maybe, exactly. So it's a similar concept to that. But to talk on what you're saying, I think a couple of things happened. One of the new things that happened over the last 10 years is WWE started really releasing a lot of stuff, the figures, the cards, the encyclopedias that had all of these legends in those items, either in the books and with the cards. And it gave the legends new shelf life because it allowed a newer generation. It allowed the older generation, our generation, all kinds of collectors to start picking up these projects, as they call them, this encyclopedia or this other, drawing book they have, or this set of cards, and allow them to chase down Brutus Beefcake, Greg Valentine, Tito Santana, so on and so forth, which allow those guys to keep picking up paydays and good paydays in some cases, in a lot of cases. So I think it was a combination of the Comic-Cons coming around, and wrestlers are kind of cool again, at least the retro wrestlers, the guys from the 80s, they'll go to Comic-Cons and they'll have bigger lines than a lot of the actors, and because everyone, whether they admitted it or not, everyone watched wrestling at some point in the 80s and 90s. You know what I mean? It's like, so even if you're with your girlfriend, you want to pretend that you didn't, everyone knows what Bruce Beefcake was, like, so it's, you go, and I've seen it happen. They'll walk up to Bruce. I've worked with Bruce before, and they'll be like, "Oh, you were so-and-so, right?" And Bruce will be like, yeah. And then they'll start throwing up points of their career, and then they'll bring up stuff that you could tell they're more than casual. And then before you know it, they're basically saying that, Bruce, it's always been a dream to meet Brutus, So I think that Comic-Cons, people are more willing to kind of be open to, embracing their childhood, or maybe embracing, a certain type of fandom. And wrestlers are perfect for that. Yeah, absolutely. Now that, everyone, it's not just the comic book authors or the novelists anymore that are there. It's, athletes and, wrestlers.
It's funny. The Comic-Con I went to, that's where I first met Brutus.
Yeah.
And next to him, and Brutus had a decent sized line, and next to him, and there was no one in line, that would be different now though, was Martin Kove and William Zabka.
Nice. You're right.
Right now, with Cobra Kai, they would have the longest line there.
That's awesome.
Funny. See, and that goes to show you this nostalgia. I mean, like you said, 10 years ago, nothing against those guys. I mean, we've all watched Karate Kid dozens of times. But because Cobra Kai getting so hot, those guys are probably commanding their best paydays in 20, 25 years.
Absolutely.
So I think that's what happens with the wrestlers too, maybe on a smaller scale. But I think, like Kenny, when Bruce's book came out and then he went in the Hall of Fame, I know his fee went up a little bit, and I know he was bringing in, he'd have longer lines again, so I think that, and, when figures come out, when cards come out, and, I think that all kind of adds to, people.
I would think Hillbilly Jim has to be a guy that's pretty sought after, right? And I never see him anywhere.
I was the last person to work with Hillbilly Jim about a year ago. He hadn't done anything since he got in the Hall of Fame, which was 2 years before that, I think.
Right.
And Hillbilly, great guy. I talk to him once every couple of months. He's told me numerous times. He's told me specific amounts. He does not need the money. He definitely doesn't need the money. But he likes to come up and see the boys once in a while. He likes to meet the fans, of course. But because he doesn't need the money, he doesn't like to travel anymore. He traveled for so
absolutely.
Often, that he's kind of just enjoying retiring now, going to the gym, a couple of times a week, playing his guitar, doing his radio show on Sirius XM.
Yeah.
Even with me, he's like, "Nick, I'll work with you again, but next time let's not do New York and New Jersey. Let's do somewhere else." He doesn't really want to get into a routine again.
Did he get the same type of was he getting a lot of lines when you had him?
Hillbilly Jim. Yeah. When I had him, I had him in Queens, New York for a big event actually last year. Big event's a convention in Queens, New York that typically draws between 600 people and over 1,000 people. So it's one of the bigger local conventions, wrestling related conventions we have. And I had Hillbilly, and we had a line for over 2 hours straight.
Wow.
Probably close to 2.5, to where he didn't stop signing or stop taking a picture.
That's unbelievable.
And Hillbilly walked away that weekend with a very nice chunk of cash. I did.
He seems like a really nice guy.
Great guy. It was me, him, Scott Casey. Actually, let me do the plug. One Last Ride. Scott Casey, and myself in the car, and it was about maybe 170 miles from Queens to Albany, and it felt like an hour because Hillbilly and Scott were just cutting up the entire time, just busting chops, and Hillbilly, the personality that everyone sees of Hillbilly on air. Yeah, that's how he is off air too. He's just great guy to have in the car. Yeah,
that's cool. I have a couple guys that I'm like, oh, I wish I could see them. A random guy is Mario Mancini.
Mario Mancini, Connecticut's own.
He's pretty cool. He's on my Facebook.
I'm from Connecticut, so.
Yeah. Oh, where, Eddie?
I'm from Fairfield.
Okay. I'm in Bristol right now.
Oh, nice.
Shout out. Yeah. Mancini's a little south of me. I forgot what town he's in. But yeah, I think Mancini had an appearance fairly recently in Rhode Island somewhere, I believe.
Like this year?
Yeah. Oh, in the last month or two. Yeah.
Nick, you're in Bristol? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So did you ever go to Independence back in the day when you were younger and see me at shows? Because I did a lot in Bristol.
Well, no. So I only moved here. My full-time job pre-pandemic was I was a food sales rep for a nationwide company called Chef's Warehouse. So I go into 5-star restaurants, country club, and try to sell the plate, cheeses, things like that.
Yeah.
The pandemic happened and that stopped, but they relocated me 5 years ago up to Bristol, Connecticut. I'm originally from Westchester.
Used to be a bunch of there. A handful of different promoters ran right in that area. In fact, is it high school? Bristol High School? I definitely worked a couple of high schools or schools in Bristol, different venues. So I forget for who, but it was a while ago.
Kenny, every time I talk to you and you tell about your wrestling days, I think to myself, I wonder if I could get in there for one match, like right now.
Of course you can. I mean, you can, Eddie.
As a manager, right? How could write some good lines.
Let me see. I'm trying to share a screen here. Let's see if I can do it. We were talking about Beefcake and weird combinations. You said Beefcake was in with the Cobra Kai guys. Can you see my screen? Is it coming up? How do I bring it up? There it is.
Oh, there it is. Yeah.
That Beetlejuice?
No.
I actually thought that was
Michael Winslow.
No, it's Michael Winslow. Yeah, it's Jones from Police Academy. So so it's pretty, and they both knew each other, but they never met, which I thought was pretty cool. You know what I mean? So like going to some of these things, it's funny to see the weird combinations that end up happening because they're sitting next to each other. So Beefcake's like, "Oh, dude, you were the guy that made all the noise," and he's like, "You're Brutus Beefcake." It was really cool. I was like, they know each other, but they never met. So
that's hilarious.
Yeah, we shut that off there.
That's really cool. Yeah, that is. that's how like I always wonder, like, how do famous people like date each other? And that's how they do it. They just call each other. I saw you on TV. They already think they know each other, kind of. They talk to each other, you know.
At Rhode Island Comic-Con last year, I was in the green room and I got to watch Ric Flair and Ice-T nearly run towards each other to give each other a hug because they were so excited to see each other.
That's awesome.
I was just eating my sandwich, and it's Ric Flair and Ice-T with big smiles on their face, running over to each other, giving each other a handshake and then a hug. And I'm like,
that's cool.
I'm like, if I wouldn't feel like such a mark, I'd take out my photo, my camera, just take a picture because it was one of those funny moments. You know, you don't see that every day.
Yeah. So Eddie, so to further school you and the people watching on these Comic-Cons and stuff like that, there was a guy who recently passed away in the area. His name was Pete, and Nick was talking about encyclopedias.
Yeah.
So these guys, so one day I'm at one of these gatherings, and he comes up, you know, and he looks a little disheveled, and he's a little nerdy looking, a nice guy, right? Mm-hmm. And he's got a bag with him, and he opens up this bag, and he's got like 2 or 3 different WWE encyclopedias in him, and he starts opening them up, and he's got them bookmarked, and the dude spent like a long time, 20, 30 years, maybe not on just the encyclopedias, but other things, but just collecting autographs anywhere. And when the encyclopedias came out, he started putting the autographs right over the bio of the guy in the encyclopedia. So this encyclopedia that I looked in, I peeked in, he showed me, he's like, yeah, look at this here. And it had hundreds of names in them in the encyclopedia. So it would say like Max Moon, you know, and then Paul Diamond would sign it. And then it would say Sonny, and Sonny would sign it. And it blew my mind. And then I found out he wasn't the only one doing this. I thought he was. All kinds of people buy the WWE encyclopedias now, and they make new ones with new guys that weren't in it. And they carry these encyclopedias around. And rather than get an 8x10 sign, they've got this one book that's just loaded with autographs in it. Have you seen anything crazy like that come on in your line, or what's the oddest thing that you've seen? I guess that's not odd anymore.
No, I would say that the encyclopedia is probably the #1 most consistent item.
Prominent now, yeah. When I first saw it, I'd never seen that before. This is a couple years ago. He's the first person I saw do it. Then I started seeing them in other places. But
I mean, I don't know how many units Vince has moved to that book, but it's a lot, and it's probably takes up 25% of the type of items at any convention. You'll see people come around with encyclopedias. I know someone that has over 700 signatures in the one book. You know? Yeah, and I
that's
think
expensive. You got to figure each one they're making anywhere from 10 to what, maybe $75 on average.
Oh yeah, I would say 10's low. So yeah, you're probably looking at $20 to $75 on average. Yeah, absolutely. And then there's a lot of people in there that passed away. So last I checked, I think he had there was maybe about 100 names that he needed to get of wrestlers that were still alive that he would be able to get. But yeah, it's a good piece. I know a lot of people bring in, your posters, your programs. Everyone loves a standard 8x10, and pictures always sell well too.
Yeah.
But weirdest thing, it's a pretty cool item actually. And
what's that?
Someone, when the Pontiac Silverdome closed, whenever that was, 4, 5, 6 years ago, someone, I don't know if they went to an auction or they found
a chair. I might have even heard you say this before. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, it was. Someone bought, I guess, about 30 to 35 Silverdome chairbacks.
I heard you say this before, yeah.
And because of Danny Davis. And he's got a bunch of guys that have signed it, but he sent one to me when I worked with Danny Davis about 5 or 6 weeks ago, and he had Danny Davis sign the seat back in the Pontiac Silverdome, and it goes in this collection where he's already got maybe a dozen. And that was, I won't say weird, that was one of the more unique items.
That's cool.
Because, who else is going to have a Superdome chair collection? I mean, and it says WrestleMania 3 he has the talent, right? The attendance, and then a little something pertaining to their career, and then he puts it up.
Just because we got on another subject, I want to jump back to that time when I said the one promoter lost his shirt.
Yes.
Danny Davis was there.
Talking about too, by the way. I know that
would be Scott Wilder, but anyways. But anyhow,
Salt City Comic-Con, right?
So anyhow, we were releasing Danny Davis's book, and I was at WrestleCon with him, and they were going to get Danny Davis signed, and also the ghostwriter with him, me, and the aisle we were in was kind of empty for a while. A lot of people were going over to see Bret Hart. People were seeing Jake the Snake. This, by the way, you might have remembered in the news if you follow some of the wrestling news that not Davey Boy Smith, British Bulldog's son.
Oh, Harry Smith.
Harry Smith.
I know.
Threw the coffee in Jake's face. It was all over the news. I was at this.
Yeah.
And Danny Davis and I were kind of walking around, and I was taking a picture with him and Mick Foley, and picture with him and Papa Pump, and people I never saw him with, and I thought it was pretty cool. And we got over to Jake, and he was about to take the picture, and all of a sudden Harry Smith comes over. He's arguing with him. You talk shit about my dad and this and that. And he threw coffee at him, and we're like, "Holy crap!" And we both jumped in, and we were pulling them apart. And Danny Davis was wearing the blue shirt and the tie, and it looked like an old WWF pull apart with him in his old ref costume. And people thought it was work. They were like, "Look at he's pulling," and I'm like, "This is no work, brother." He just threw hot coffee, and we didn't know what was going on. And Harry Smith eventually took off out a back door. He didn't want to get arrested because Jake called the cops on him, legit, or his promoter, or something happened there. Really odd story. I figured I would tell that. But that's a sideline to this. We're in signing books, and there's not many people around, and all of a sudden the whole aisle just fills up. We turned around, and there's tons of people, and they're kind of looking at the table, but they're not really buying anything. And we're like, wow, there's people here, but they're and they're blocking the table almost. And we realize they're all waiting in line for Stone Cold Steve Austin, who's like a mile away from where we are in this warehouse type situation. And it was so bad that line of people was making it so people couldn't even get to our table just because of the way it was laid out. And Scott had lost a ton of sales just because of the fact there was a wall in front of the people that he paid to be at that table, and he paid for the table too. He was pissed, and I didn't blame him. I felt bad for him.
That happened to me one time in Philly. I had Juventud Guerrera and Brian Christopher, and for about 45 minutes, no one can get to my table because there was a line for Hall, Nash, Bischoff, and X-Pac doing a photo op.
Like BNWO thing.
It was brutal. So
it was not too sweet for you.
No, well played. So I can feel Scott's pain, and I've been in a similar situation before.
Yeah, that sucks. So Eddie, ask another mark out question here.
We got one right
here.
Here we go. From Jamie Hemmings. I don't know why the names aren't showing up tonight, but
that's all right.
What's the most surprising thing you learned about Scott while working on the book?
Ooh, good question, Jamie. Well, the most surprising thing, I guess, to know was that when Scott left wrestling, it really wasn't on his terms. Like he didn't really want to leave wrestling, but it was at a time when you were either working for WWF or you were working for WCW, or you weren't working full time. So he had a lot of resentment, not necessarily towards wrestling, but maybe towards Vince McMahon for a period of time, and that was what. Yeah, which it is.
There's this hate-love thing with wrestling. Like you get pissed at it because it's not going your way, but you're addicted to it, so you can't get out of it. I can totally feel his pain on that from lots of people I've talked to, as well as myself, when I was doing independence and not quite doing exactly what I wanted to do or go where I wanted to go. You feel like you have to keep doing it, but you can't get out of it, and it's not
like an abusive relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was one of the surprising things. There's another surprising thing that I learned about Scott, and this is a good tease for the book, because a lot of people thought or think that Scott was a gigolo. There was a rumor going around in the 80s and 90s that Scott was a professional gigolo. So we get to the bottom of that in the book, and it did surprise me a bit.
Eddie's had that rumor go out.
People think that about me all the time.
Yeah,
I didn't read that book.
I just watched his. He was on Saturday night's Main Event against Ravishing Rick Rude.
Yeah, he had a feud with Rude. Yep, I remember that.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah,
I always got him confused with Ron Bass.
Yeah. So
I could see that. Yeah.
They were talking about it at some point. So one time, it's in the book, but Vince asks Scott to bring his spurs, his lasso, and everything to a TV taping. So Scott thought this was going to be his big break, and actually he brought it to the TV taping just so he can show like Ron Bass how to use it and let him borrow it. When they introduced Ron Bass's outlaw gimmick.
Yeah.
So that was unfortunately how Scott's career turned out with Vince.
Didn't he did get, they threw him a bone at one point though. He replaced somebody.
Yeah, he did
at a Survivor Series or something, right?
He replaced Brian Blair, who replaced the Junkyard Dog. Yeah. So it was actually, ironically enough, and this will be the perfect segue. It was Tito Santana, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, Jake Roberts, and Ken Patera. Yeah. With Scott and God bless, they're all still alive, all five of them, against Andre the Giant, Dino Bravo, Kurt Hennig, Rick Rude, and Harley Race, who have all passed away. And that was Scott's big. He made a great payday. I think $10,000 he got for that match. And he was like, I was in the ring for a couple of minutes. Easy night of work. But yeah, that was his one pay-per-view match.
So is this a segue to Ken Patera?
Yeah, I figured. Yeah.
All right. Do you still have that clip up, Eddie? Do you want to show that, or is that gone? You can dig it up while we talk.
I can bring it up in 1 second.
So Nick's got Ken Patera coming in soon for an autograph signing, and I'm helping produce a book. My buddy Simon Gregory, who used to do a lot of podcasts, he was on the New Era podcast a year or so ago. Stepped away from wrestling a little bit, podcast, talk show type stuff recently. And but still wanted to stay in the business a little bit. And I had a bunch of projects on my plate. And I asked him, hey, do you want to do Ken Patera's book? So he's like, yeah, that'd be great. So he's been interviewing him about a year now. It's got a ton of stuff. And anyhow, I'm going to help publish it. I'm going to help put it out. Same as I offered you some advice, Nick. And also Ian Douglas in the past, I showed him how to publish and get some stuff in areas. So you're not just handing over your work to a publisher and letting them take over. He's getting the stuff ready for this guy right here, Ken Patera. So what did we say before the show started here? We were talking about this clip.
The swinging full Nelson on Jim Powers.
Look at that.
Oh, that's who that is, Jim Powers?
Jim Powers, yeah.
Nice.
Wow.
And the double body slam was on the tongue, the Jimmy Snuka. Remember we were talking about double body slam? That's who it was. Yeah.
Cool.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I love how. I wonder if you guys can name everyone in the video.
Oh, not the black and white guys, or the guys that are the guy that took Snook a splash. There's Uncle Elmer though.
Yeah. So I think I see over on the right. I see Sean Mooney.
Oh yeah. Saturday Night
There we go.
There it is. It was a slam. All right. Yeah, it was a slam. So on Kamala, we were talking about.
Yeah, River. Yep.
So my buddy Simon has got a big bunch of notes, and he's starting to put the book together. And here's something I think I've also told Nick that he should do, and I may have even sent you a picture of this. And I stole this idea from Bill Apter, who's been on the show a handful of times and done stuff with us before, Wrestling Bookmarks. I told Simon, I said, you got to get these little squares. They're about this big, and you would see them on a shipping package, right? Just a white label. Mm-hmm. And what Bill Apter does is he doesn't do a whole lot of you send him a book and he signs it and emails it back. He'll just mail you a little square of a decal, a sticker, and it's autographed, and he slaps it in the book. And if you create the book with a certain heaviness of paper, a certain paper weight, the sticker almost camouflages and looks identical to the page. You almost don't even see it. They call it like a plate. Some people call it an autograph plate. So I told Simon, I said, hey, get him to sign a bunch of those because, as you know, a lot of the wrestlers have an expiration date. We don't want them to go and, not give the opportunity for an autographed book, to a fan that might want to pay that and then extra bucks to family in the future, because you could go from having a $25 book to a $35 or $40 book with that sticker in there. And it takes them a second or so to sign it. So it helps them. So Simon's like, yeah, that's cool. He's like, we'll send the stickers out. And I told him, yeah, I'll send them. And I forgot. And I'm also working on helping produce Lance Von Erich's book. Yeah. And also Chavo Guerrero Sr.'s book.
Wow.
And also Curtis Hughes. And while all of those are all ones that I had set aside while I'm also working on Bruce Pritchard's book on myself. I was writing that. Just Incredible's book. Also at the time, Greg Valentine, which is a little bit on hold, as well as perhaps Sid. So I just couldn't do all of that at the same time. It was just too crazy, right? And I forgot. So I forgot to send the decals to Ken, and he was just going to sign them and all. So since he's in Albany, I'm in Albany. What I wanted to do was just give him a package, and so I'll come by and just hand him an envelope if that's cool, and he'll probably sign those. So I think you and I may have talked about this in the past, and if you haven't done it yet, I'll show you those at this signing, and you should get Scott Casey to sign those.
I've seen them not for books. I've seen them for baseball cards, like the smaller
little, yeah. So, and I'll send you a picture of what I use and stuff, because there's a certain label that's really good for books that when you use the white, I think it's 60-pound paper. So I'll show you what most books have. It's probably the same as your book. That it's seamless and looks really good. And just one other note to that is when we put Vader's book together just before he passed, he said, is there a way I can sign them? Because I know I'm going to die within 2 years. I know this is super creepy and sad, right? But I'd like to sign them so that my fans can have autographed book. And if I'm not here, the family can make some extra money that way and this and that. And Bill Apter said, this is what I do. And him and I talked about this in the past, and we did it with Sabu's book, and then Vader did it. So Vader actually signed these decals for a book he never even saw. He passed away before the book came out, but you can still get an autographed book by him. So it's a really neat thing to have as a backup plan. You know what I mean? To have these plates kicking around, so I'll show you at the thing.
Well, this came up actually, if you remember, Kenny, because we had talked. I was working. I'm still working, I guess, technically, on Killer Tim Brooks.
Yeah. Yep.
And Tim passed away before he can read what was essentially the first draft. Yeah. So it's a shame that if I would have known that, or had we spoke about that particular topic earlier, I'm sure he would have been open and something we could have done for that impending release, whenever that'll be.
Yep. Okay, Eddie, so you're trying to ask another mark out question.
Well, now you also said that you have Candace Michelle. Is that
yes. Right? Yes. Yeah. So Candace Michelle, it won't be a public signing. Okay. Candace Michelle will be Facebook Live, actually, to where they'll be able to come over to the Captain's Corner Facebook Live page, and then it'll be me and Candace. So what I've been doing, because of these times where we don't really have many public appearances anymore, so I've been doing similar to what you guys are doing now over the StreamYard. I've been using Facebook Live and kind of having these virtual meet and greets. And
so yeah, tell us about that. What I was going to do was I was going to first ask you what I have like a little list of things I wanted to ask you here.
Yeah,
I was going to first ask you what a private signing is.
Sure.
And then can you speak on that, and then tell us how it's now transformed into a private / virtual, which is also a sort of a public morph of the both of them.
Yeah, so
what's a private signing?
A private signing happens behind closed doors, meaning that the public isn't typically allowed to be there. But
are people skeptical, or do they? What do you do to show that this is
fantastic
legit?
Question? So usually there's just photographic proof of the talent either signing or holding the item after it's finished. With what tomorrow we're actually having a JSA is one of the leaders in authenticating autographs and certifying appearances. We're actually bringing in JSA to have a representative there while Candace signs everything. So everything that Candace signs tomorrow night is going to come with a JSA witness certification. To prove that
what do they do? How do they archive or prove that somebody's done a signing? Like, do they save it in a computer?
Serial number. Yeah, exactly. There's a number they include, and a little, I guess,
you can look up. It's a hologram, right?
Yeah. Well, there's the hologram, and then there's also a little card that comes with it too.
Yeah. I mean, everything I buy, I make sure it's JSA.
Yeah, which is JSA, PSA. Yeah, those are two of the leaders. Beckett's great with certifying autographs.
Yeah. I think JSA is number one for autographs. In my opinion.
I love JSA. I respect them.
So, PSA. Are there two different levels? Because I actually know the answer to these questions, but I'm asking you this anyway. Can you speak to the idea of certifying and then authenticating? Meaning, were they there to watch it, or can they look at another autograph that happened when they weren't around and then say, I believe this is legit?
Good question. So yeah, they're not authenticating anything tomorrow night because they are just going to certify what's being done. The X amount of autographs that are being done in front of their eyes. So if I brought a Candace Michelle piece with me tomorrow and Candace could say she signed it, they're not going to certify COA that autograph, But if I put a piece of paper and Candace signs it in front of them, they're going to witness that.
Right. And are there services to say that I have an 8x10 of, I'm trying to think of someone who might not have been around for Haystacks Calhoun.
Sure.
And that's, by the way, that's one I really want. And I've been watching online and I haven't found one ever that doesn't have a name on it, like To Lewis or something.
Yeah. Kills it, yeah.
But is there a service that you could put the 8x10 in front of, and then they look at it and they put it under their magnifying glass like they do on Pawn Stars, and the guy says, "This I think is a real autograph." Does JSA do that too?
Yeah, they do. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they'll be able.
How would somebody make that happen?
You'd have to mail it in to them because the collectible market is in such a boom right now. I'm hearing that everything's back ordered anywhere from 8 to 10 weeks. So it used to be you send your thing, your card in or your photo in today, and in 2 weeks you'd have it back, and it would say that the autograph passed or it failed the certification. Now it's taking more than 2 months in a lot of cases for your stuff to get back because thousands more items per week are being sent in.
I sent a bulk order in 4 months ago and I still haven't gotten it.
See, there you go. So 4 months. Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And I think Nick can also speak to this. It seems to me like there are far more virtual signings and just auctions and things happening on Facebook and other places than I've ever seen before.
Absolutely.
And it seems like a lot of real dog shit is going for high prices, which I can't explain. Like, I'll put it on and someone will be like, "Hey, I got this thing and I'm selling it for $80." And I'm looking at it, I'm like, the thing that he's holding is probably worth $5. It's something he printed off of his computer, and the autograph might be worth 10 or 20. How's he getting 80 out of it? And then it sells. And I'm like, I don't understand.
Well, I'll tell you what, I mean, for me being a collector, I'm at a point where I'm like, do I just sell everything I have? Because I know it's not worth what people are paying for right now. I know.
Well, see, you think that, but some people are paying top dollars, and I think it's because they're bored sitting at home and they got nothing else to do, so they go on these auctions and just buy shit. And
no,
they're buying stuff that I don't
think that's it.
No.
Matter of fact, no. Do you remember the guy? I think Alan Greenspan. He was the chairman of the Fed Reserve of the Fed.
Okay.
Okay. In 1960 something, he wrote an article about economics. How you have the people that get in early, right? That's like people like me. I'm just a collector because I like to collect. Mm-hmm. Then you have people the speculators. Those are the people that you make money off of, right? Because those are the people that are like, oh, I'm going to buy it.
But they kill the business in the long run.
Hope to make money off of it, right?
Yeah.
And then when all those speculators decide now is the time to sell, well, then it's too late because no one's going to pay what they paid, and now they lose money. And then people like me, collectors, are like, oh, I'll go buy that. And that's
it depends on what you're collecting, though, Eddie. Because right now, wrestling stuff is like it's selling for a lot more than it used to. I don't know why.
I mean, I just picked up these a few months ago.
Oh, Wrestling All Stars, yeah,
oh, that's cool.
$200. I got the whole set.
How much?
I have it on eBay right now for $700.
You said 200?
This is 82 Wrestling All Star Series B.
200?
I paid $200 for them. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that you could triple that easily. I mean,
yeah. And now I have them. I have them up for $6.99 right now.
Yeah.
Now, if I get it, nice. I was gonna send them in to get graded, but the other stuff I have is taking forever. And I'm like, it might take me 6 months to get this stuff back.
Nick, do you see more money do you see more money coming in right now or less?
Oh, I know it's absolutely the. I mean, I don't know how long the bubble's going to expand. The market can only grow so much,
right.
But
it's up, right? It's up,
right? Everything percentage wise, but it's through the roof. So I sold. I went to my mother's house maybe about 7 or 8 months ago. So right pre-pandemic, we're talking December or January. So I guess maybe 10 months now. So I went to my mother's house and I found my whole LJN collection from when I was a kid. And that LJN collection. Yep.
I got an extra. I got two. I have two.
And he has another house filled with LJN stuff.
So I had everything but the Black Card series, which is your Hakus, your Warlords, really expensive ones. But I had everything else. And I sold everything by February, and I made good money, but I literally, let's just say I made $3,000 off of the collection. I would have been able to make at least double.
Wow.
Now,
I saw a loose Don Morocco sell for $90 the other day.
Get out of here. Really?
On eBay. Yeah. I'm like, I have like 10 of those.
Yeah. Is it in mint?
No, it wasn't even in great shape. It was just like just a normal.
I think I sold Morocco for $12 or $15, in January. So
that's what I would have been selling them for to us. I usually sell my commons for like $8.
Yeah. So the market's out of control right now, Kenny, to where it's allowed me to do these virtual signings. And I actually like the virtual signings because I get to, I'm so used to going to the conventions and setting up my table and then having to rush or having to stress or having to run around. Whereas if it's me and you, Kenny,
and you didn't have to pay for the table $200.
No, exactly. Yeah, right? Exactly. I already paid for my computer. So, I don't have to worry about any other costs other than the case of maybe whatever I'm drinking that night. And, I'll do a couple of rounds with someone and we'll answer questions. And it's really low key. I'll hold up the item, Eddie, this is your signed copy of One Last Ride by Cowboy Scott Casey. I'll open up and show it to the customer, and lots of them will take pictures.
How do you get the money, though? This is something that Eddie and I talked about when we did COVID Con.
Yeah.
We were like, let's do virtual signings for them. And we're like, and then I remember Rob the Slob was like, dude, I don't understand how this is going to work. And we argued, and then we just didn't kind of do any virtual signings. This is before before they even popped up. They just started popping up during, COVID. How do you get the money? Like, how does it come in?
It's all.
I know it's PayPal, but when?
85 to 90% of it's the electronic funds. So your PayPal, your Venmo, your Cash Apps.
At the moment that they sign it, or before, or after.
So I'm fortunate in that I've probably done over 24, Facebook Lives at this point. So I've got a fair amount of a good customer base to where 90% of the people that buy in my auction are previous customers. So I don't need them to buy right away. There's sometimes for some of the higher price, like when I had Steve Lombardi last month, and he brought up his original Doink outfit, and it went for almost $1,700.
Whoa, I would have bought that.
Yeah. So yeah, you got Eddie. I'm gonna have without going too crazy, I'm gonna have an original Macho Man outfit up for auction.
Are you serious?
Original Macho Man outfit, original Chris Jericho tights from WCW '96.
Nice.
They're both going to be up in the next month. I'll give you all the information afterwards. Yeah.
Oh my God.
But
it's unbelievable.
That's so, and that's going to.
I don't think I could afford it, but I'd like that Macho Man.
So
I might move a Don Morocco LJN for that.
There you go.
Right? These days, you'd probably be able to pull it off as a fair trade in some places.
Yeah.
So with the Lombardi, that was a $1,700 item.
That's awesome.
Once I said it's sold, I had no previous transactions with this customer. So and Lombardi needed to get paid,
so
and
shaking in the boots a little, right?
So yes, and Steve by nature, I love Steve. He wanted to make sure it was on the up and up too. So now we had a 3-hour public signing. So during the public signing, Heroes Hideout, I go there every month, but for some reason my cell phone reception is never good there. I don't get messages until I get in the parking lot lots of times, so I'm not able to contact people live. So I was able to get into the car and I started contacting everyone. Luckily, we got everything figured out. But typically, if I have great Wi-Fi connection, I'll contact the person right away. If it's a $20 photo, worst I'm out is $20. Someone said they want something and they don't, and that's happened before. I had someone place like a $300 order and they never paid me.
Not much though, just a little bit here and there.
I know I have a lot of friends in the vendor world that it's happened a lot to. I'm fortunate, knock on wood, a handful of times at most have I been stiffed.
One of the things about the wrestling memorabilia that I found that I didn't know before I got into collecting again was that the reason ring worn stuff is worth so much money because they didn't have baseball players. They could have 100 different uniforms.
Yeah,
in a season.
Yeah,
but Macho Man probably had 2 pairs of boots for 2 years.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel so Macho Man 2, it's you can show this is from a WrestleMania 4 match against Ted DiBiase.
Right.
Whereas for Reggie Jackson, okay, this is the bat he broke in regular season game 110 against the Angels. You know what I mean? It's right. It feels more significant in lots of cases.
Well, plus they had that. I don't know if you remember the scam that they had in football with Eli Manning, where they were selling game worn jerseys, and he would be in the locker room, put it on for 1 second, and take it off, and they would sell it as a game worn jersey.
Yeah, that's awful.
That's terrible. But I've been looking for something ring worn for a long time, and the only thing that I've ever seen for auction was I think Sam Houston had a boot for sale.
A boot. eBay has a lot of stuff though, man. I see stuff on eBay that's good all the time, and then I just kind of watch it, and then I never buy it because it's high. And
if I could ever find an Andre boot, I would buy that in a heartbeat.
An Andre boot,
yeah.
Eddie, I'll give you my information. Where Ken Patera, when he comes up, we're doing one of the Facebook Lives before a public appearance.
Yeah.
Ken Patera is bringing up some of his boots that he wore in the '80s, and then one of his old sequined robes that he's going to be auctioning off.
Oh, that's pretty cool. That's awesome.
Nikita Koloff, I'm working with him next week. He's going to be bringing some stuff up too. So it's a lot, but that all goes to show you that the market's booming right now. Especially, I feel like that particular market, the figure market in the subculture, and then also the ring used market is just through the roof right now.
Now, why do you? Here's the question.
Yeah.
Do you think we're going to reach a point where no one's going to know who these guys are from the '80s, and their stuff will just plummet because? My kids are 5 and 7. They don't know who Adrian Adonis is. They never will. It's not like sports where you have that history because you have the record books and the Hall of Fames. And I do wonder if we reach a peak where, I turn 60 and I have to start selling stuff for retirement. So who am I going to sell it to?
So I think at some point, because of the rapid speed that the legends in wrestling, I feel like every year we have a bad year with losing our legends.
Yeah.
And it's okay, every year in January, you hope that this year is not going to be as bad as the last year was. I feel like every year, Rocky Johnson, Killer Tim Brooks, the list goes on and on. We keep losing people, and I think that at some point the convention scene is going to be affected by that. I don't know when that's going to happen, because a lot of our guys are not getting any younger, and then the guys that are kind of there to replace them, your Cenas, your Austins, your Rocks. I mean, you can't
they don't need the money.
Austin's done one and he got paid six figures. So,
right.
I mean,
we're like Zach Ryder and different guys like now. Will they fill in the space, or it won't be as prominent?
I mean, I'm sure Zach Ryder he'll be able to make convention appearances, sure, but I don't think it's going to be like having Bruno headline a convention, or having the Ultimate Warrior headline a convention.
Right. And not to mention, a lot of these guys now, I mean, they have financial advisors. They're doing more than just wrestling. They have multiple streams of revenue.
Yeah.
I mean, the Miz, he doesn't need to do a convention. He doesn't. No, he never did. He's spent for the rest of his life.
No, you're right. And I mean, he's that contract with that television show. So right. I doubt he's going to be, coming in for, appearances under 20 to 25K.
Yeah.
And then does someone come close to making that back on the Miz? Maybe. I mean, the first time, but the second time and third time and the fourth time, I mean, I don't know, right. And I think that's part of the problem too. I think the guaranteed money from this era, to where all these guys, they're not getting paid on, selling out arenas, and they have the guaranteed money. And then I think because just the inflation, the kind of money that they're making, and just that they probably don't want to do it. I think all of those factors are going to play into 10 years where, there's only a handful of guys from that 70s, 80s. Early 90s generation, they're still on the scene, and then there's like a gap that hasn't really been filled.
So it's weird because there's a new type of collector. You've got people that like to get the 8x10 and like get their action figures signed, but there's this other type of collector now. And I have a friend on Facebook named Rocky Mazio who comes to Heroes Hideout. He had cancer, and you might recognize like his hair or whatever a little bit. I used to work with this guy 20 years ago at a McDonald's, not 30 years ago, a long time ago when I was a kid almost. And guys like him, I almost call them, and I don't think there's a name for it unless you know something I don't. I call them meatheads, because they just want to meet the guy and get a selfie with him. They don't care about like an object. They want the digital representation of I've met this person and I can put it on my Facebook. And I think at the same time with the collectors and these meathead selfie collectors, I guess, they just want to meet the guy, that's created this big boom in the Comic-Con world or the appearance world. But with that meathead guy, and I've had this conversation with other people before, the guy that wants to meet these people. I'm trying to coin the term meathead, by the way. It's not working, but I'm trying. Anyhow, this guy goes to all of these Comic-Cons. I'm going to use this guy, Rocky, for an example. He'll go to tons of these Comic-Cons, but eventually he's seen this guy. He's met Arnold Schwarzenegger and Captain Kirk and, Incredible Hulk, and also every wrestler in the area, Does it eventually come to pass where they've pretty much either gotten sick because it's sick of it, and it's no longer fun because they've met tons of different people and they've got that celebrity starstruck thing out of their system? Or do we burn out in town and kill the town with all the people that they could have met, and then they eventually go, all right, I'm kind of done doing this and wasting my money on it? What do you think the future is with that type of fan? Or am I just making a big, thesis here that you can't speak on?
No. It's a good question. So I think actually the lifeblood of the hobby is the autograph enthusiast. Because like you said, there are people that will take multiple autographs. They'll meet Kenny Casanova once, and they'll meet him again a year from now, and they'll keep wanting to take a picture. But a lot of people, they'll get the one picture and they'll be done with them.
And they got it.
Whereas, like you said, you brought up Bret Hart earlier. Bret Hart, he makes his 2 appearances in New York, New Jersey every year, and every year he's got a huge line for 3 to 4 hours. And it's not just photo ops, but it's because he's had a new figure released or a new card released or someone's picking up a new project they want Bret Hart in. I feel like the autograph side of things is kind of what's going to keep the hobby always afloat. But at the same time, there are people that are only in it for getting the photograph, which at this point, the virtual meet and greet does nothing for that section of people.
Right. So when you were doing the live appearances, how many people just shook the hand, got the $20 handshake and the selfie? by itself, or is it usually a combo of got the autograph signed and then also that extra stuff?
So typically what I do is a $20 autograph, $20 photo. Mm-hmm. So, to create a deal that's, fair for the customer and, is able to, bring in some extra revenue. On my end, you do a $30 combo because people are more likely to spend $30 than $40 maybe, Okay. And there are people that are going to get both regardless, but I feel like the combo's there to maybe entice people that weren't sure about getting both. Exactly. Yeah. So, But
you see more sales as an autograph or more sales from the collector than you do from the selfie guy.
Absolutely, because I have customers that, let's just say I have Brutus Beefcake that'll walk up to me and say I have 15 Brutus Beefcake items.
That's why. Okay, so that guy's going to be worth way more than the guy that's going to get one selfie. And you're going to give him 3 or 4 pictures anyhow because he wants to get the best picture. Yeah.
Even if I just charge that guy that has 15 items, even if I give him 2 or 3 items for free,
right?
I would still need 12 photo people to equal that. The
one guy, yeah.
And photos typically take longer because especially the talent's older, they have to get up and sit down,
right?
And then, the photo. Then there's the person that hates the way they look in the photo, so you need a do-over. Then there's the person that doesn't know how to take the photo, which I'm guilty of sometimes. So whereas just the signature, like you said earlier, Kenny, you can just bang that out in 5 seconds, maybe 10 seconds if you really take your time.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting. I forgot who it was. Oh, I offered George the Animal Steel $200 to do my voicemail for me. He wouldn't do it.
For $200?
$200. I'd have been all over that. I would have been eating the phone.
I wanted him to be my voicemail message.
You tell me who you want, Eddie. I could probably get a lot of guys that'll do that for $200 or less. Yeah, that's
great.
Yeah, I mean that was obviously a long time ago, but
so Nick,
I think it's. What?
I was just saying I don't want to keep Nick too long. I always tell the people about an hour or so, and we're starting to go over that. So,
go ahead.
I was just going to ask you if you wanted to go a little longer, if you want to talk about.
Well, I was going to make one point real quick about
the
industry.
Sure.
I think I'd be a bear on it only for the fact that because Vince controls everything, it seems like with all the content, he doesn't seem to want to show any of the old wrestlers at all. You know what I mean? Even on the they just don't promote anything from the old days.
You mean history, right? They don't talk about history,
right?
Yeah. I mean,
he doesn't make money off old stuff, though. Really, only.
But the thing is, they could build a physical Hall of Fame. I don't know why they haven't done that.
Now that's a great question because you're right. If they made something like a Cooperstown, but for wrestling fans,
I would go to Harpy.
That'd be an additional source of revenue for years to come. So I don't know why they haven't. I don't know why they haven't done that, but it might just be he's not interested in going down that route for maybe the reasons you mentioned. He doesn't really want to talk about history previous to the last 20 years. But I
think think about anytime you watch any sporting event there is, right?
Yeah.
They'll always, if you watch the Yankees, they're going to talk about Don Mattingly. They're going to talk about Babe Ruth. They're going to talk about Mickey Mantle. Mm-hmm. If we're watching the heavyweight championship, match on WWE, they're not talking about Hulk Hogan.
No, you're right.
San Martino.
You're right. I feel like, but the thing is, wrestling fans have great memories. So if
loyal,
very loyal, and they've got fantastic memories. So the wrestling fans, if it's something's for the NWA World Heavyweight Title, something's for the WWE World Heavyweight Title, they'll think of matches in the past where that's happened, where the title changed. But like you said, the announcers are being told not to bring it up for whatever reason.
Right. I feel like it would be a lot better for for not only the business, but just keeping the industry alive. From a different standpoint.
Yeah, and there's an opposite side of the coin to this too. Is that you may notice when they do when WrestleMania was a thing. I don't know if it will be next year, but when they did big WrestleManias and big events like this, they may bring back a big name. And the big name will be the draw, like Undertaker or, John Cena will make an appearance at WrestleMania, or Triple H would show up, But I think recently they have said that they've done away with wanting marquee wrestlers. They want to just push the brand. They want to push WWE as being what you're buying. No longer will there ever be, and this is what Triple H said in a stockholders meeting, no longer will there ever be a marquee wrestler like John Cena that they've invested all their money into. But the thing that I find ironic with that, and to speak on the future of wrestling, is that those are the guys that they lean on when they go over to Saudi Arabia and they've got the big bucks coming in, or those are the guys that they lean on for the main event of WrestleMania, or you want to see Undertaker in his streak, or, you know, what have you. They bring back The Rock to wrestle maybe Roman Reigns or something as a new dream match or something, right? With them not creating a new marquee name and just pushing their brand, are they killing the future of the business, you know, later on down the road when you want someone to lean on and there's nobody left but Zack Ryder to bring back? You see what I'm saying? And who wasn't a main event?
No, I mean, 100%. I mean, they're not, if you think about it, them not having that younger generation headline, you know, for the most part, the last 10 years of WrestleMania is going to affect the next 10 years of WrestleMania.
Yeah.
Because, they're not creating those new mainstream level stars. They've got guys that are, you know, over with the wrestling crowd, the 2 million people that watch Raw, but it's not like, you know, when 7 million people were watching Raw and Rock was headlining and Austin was on, and, you know, the people at the water cooler were talking about it, you know, your casual fans. Because that's kind of when I always know wrestling's doing well when people that know I'm a wrestling fan but that don't care about it want to talk wrestling, you know. And that hasn't happened in years.
So there's a lot less, you know, younger, newer guys, new generation jumping on. I mean, the cat's been out of the bag for a number of years now. And I think what happens is this younger generation underneath us, why would I want to watch something fake and there's no big name draw to it, just the title of the company, you know? So they go to UFC and watch a real beatdown, you know what I mean? If that's what they want. Mm-hmm. So that's why I think you're seeing some viewership drop off and all. I really think missing part of the formula and beyond the audience not being there, but is that they don't have a Hulk Hogan. They don't have, you know, a big name. You have bigger names, you know, maybe Kevin Owens, Randy Orton, what have you. Right. But come down the road, say 20 years from now, when Disney owns WWE, because that's who's going to own it, I think.
Right.
I highly doubt that, like, you know, Natalia will be their headline that they bring in to sell out WrestleMania, or someone that, you know, was around a lot during this time but wasn't really a headline. You know what I mean? I don't know that it'll draw. So would Disney even want to buy him 20 years from now? I don't know.
No, it's true. Yeah.
So.
Oh, here, somebody wants to say that they really enjoy the sales with all the guys.
Oh, what's up? Yeah, he's a good brother. He's in the Facebook Live.
Yep.
Nice. Yeah. Come to the Captain's Corner happy hour specials.
I think he wrote some questions in ColleaCon, right? I recognize.
Yeah, you know what? I was actually thinking, Will, so is he still on right now? I don't know if he's still on, but if he's still watching, I was thinking, Kenny, remember we said we had some merch that we could send out? We should send him an 8x10. Yeah.
All right. I think he just won a Coco Beware 8x10.
Oh, so nice.
Send Eddie send Eddie an 8 by your address and we'll send you an 8x10.
Yeah.
As long as you're not in like Australia or something. That's
right.
Bullshit.
No, he's stateside. He's stateside.
Okay. I hate that. Like, I offer a free book to someone, they're like, oh, by the way, mate, I'm in Australia. I'm like, shit, now I gotta spend $30.
That happened to me too. I had a contest and someone won the free book in England, and I'm
it sucks, right? They don't realize it's an extra like $20 right off the bat when you leave the borders. So
yeah.
All right.
By the way, we'll let him go. But he had Danny Davis on a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, last month, right? Absolutely.
And you just missed. We got the Mr. X mask made. So he's going to be doing appearances now as Mr. X if you need a Mr. X.
That's awesome.
Hasn't happened at all. But I looked and I worked with a guy and finally got like the exact replica of the red mask with the white and the eyes and the whole deal. So you can book a Danny Davis as Mr. X for selfies, which no one has yet because he sold his red mask back in the 90s and hasn't had a red mask since then. So
that's very cool. When things start opening up, I'm gonna have to reach out to Danny and have you come in, right? Danny, and bring some of the books. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's a cool photo. Yeah.
Real quick, one last thing I was thinking about, Kenny, in the Tito book where Tito talks about the belt that they smashed.
Oh,
you know what that thing would be worth right now?
Oh yeah, he said that himself. So just to catch Nick up on
25,000, 20,000 probably easily.
Yeah. So Nick, you might remember there was a big blow off match. Tito Santana finally won the belt back from Greg the Hammer Valentine in a steel cage.
Yeah.
Greg Valentine got pissed, took the belt, and smashed it all up and down the cage. Now, in the Tito book, just to make a long story short, Tito got home, brought the broken belt back with him because the new belt wasn't there yet. They were making a new modern belt. It was more like the IC belt that you would eventually see Mr. Perfect with and everything like that, that plate. And his wife looked at the old belt and said, "This thing's a piece of shit. They really did a number on breaking this one up in the ring, huh?" And he's like, "Yeah." So he's like, "Well, I got the new one coming at the next TV tape." And then she eventually threw it out. She threw the belt away. And Tito told Greg, and Greg was like, "You know how much money we could have made for that? Oh my God, he threw it away. What the hell?" You know? So yeah, Eddie, you're right. That belt's probably worth a lot of money now.
Well, it's probably out there somewhere. We got to find it.
It's in a dump somewhere.
Everyone's gonna start. All the collectors are gonna start going dumpster diving in New Jersey.
Yeah, metal detector, right?
Exactly.
That's funny.
Outside of Hackensack, New Jersey, wherever Tito is now.
All right, Nick. Well, listen. Thanks for stopping by. Where can so what do we got? What do you got to plug here?
Okay, I'd like to start with One Last Ride: The Tale of Cowboy Scott Casey. It's a book that came out early 2019, so it's been out for close to 2 years now. They can contact me directly at Nicholas Masci or Captain's Corner to get an autographed copy of the book, or they can go on Blurb and order a copy. And then I also want to plug my Captain's Corner Facebook page, where they'll be able to go and see some of the virtual meet and greets that I've been doing and that I have coming up in the next couple of weeks. I've got a bunch of great guys coming up. So we have Candice Michelle this Saturday at 10 a.m. We have Ken Patera this Saturday night at 8 p.m. Next week, we have Nikita Koloff, and we have Austin Isle and David San Martino coming up. So, please check out Captain's Corner on Facebook. They'll be able to get all the details about who I have coming up for the live meet and greets, the virtual meet and greets, and all the information they need about One Last Ride. But you know what? Thank you guys for having me on. I think there's a part 2 in the future. If you guys are up for it, I am.
Sounds good. In fact, Nick, what I might do is some week when I get lazy because I don't like to do these all the time, but Eddie loves them and I act like I hate these. But if you want to actually host with Eddie, I'll just leave and put you in with someone else some week. If you want.
No, I'd love to. I had a good time with you guys. Love talking to you guys. So yeah, you let me know how I can help you guys, and I'm up for it.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Nick.
Boys. All right. See you on Sunday.
Cool. So Captain's Corner Facebook, check it out, and more virtuals coming up, I'm sure. So
absolutely.